Hi everyone, welcome back to Radio Night Crime. Before you drift off, let me know in the comments where you're listening from. If you're enjoying the stories, don't forget to like and subscribe. Now let's relax and jump into tonight's case. Story 1. In 2020, the social media platform TikTok in the US was flooded with videos featuring absurd pranks, arguments, and even fights. These videos attracted a lot of views and comments. The significant thing is, none of this was spontaneous. It was all orchestrated by the uploader, Zachary. He intentionally provoked and argued with the Durham family, recording everything to post on TikTok with the aim of gaining more views. This escalated to the point where he was willing to take Mr. Durham's life. So what kind of trouble did Zachary cause? And why did he attack Mr. Durham? The main character of this story is Zachary Latham. He's an experienced race car driver. Besides his passion for racing, Zachary also loved posting videos on TikTok. The content of these videos usually revolved around his interests, either showcasing his racing skills or showing off his cars. While Zachary was good at driving, he could only reach speeds of 160 kilometers per hour around his house, which is why his racing videos typically only garnered a few hundred views. In 2018, when Zachary was just 16, his parents were too busy with work to pay much attention to him. Therefore, he was sent to live with his grandparents in Warmlands, New Jersey. His grandparents were elderly, and there was a generational gap, so they didn't communicate much with him. This made Zachary even more bored and lonely. As a result, he started posting videos on TikTok to seek attention from social media. The content of Zachary's videos was mostly about his daily activities, like strolling around the neighborhood. Notably, the neighborhood where Zachary's grandparents lived was typical for retirees. Most of the residents were elderly people, thus they couldn't stand the daily noise from Zachary's racing car. The family most affected by this was Zachary's neighbors, the family of William Durham Sr. Finally, Mr. Durham went to Zachary's grandparents' house to discuss the issue. However, Mr. Durham only offered advice to Zachary's grandfather, suggesting that he could ask his grandson to drive slower to reduce the noise. Actually, Zachary's grandparents had been concerned about this issue for a while. However, since no one had objected before, they turned a blind eye. But now, with the neighbors complaining, Zachary's grandparents realized it was time to discipline their grandson. His grandfather truly gave him a stern scolding. Not only that, he demanded that Zachary go to the Durham family's house to apologize in person. At that time, Zachary was still a very obedient and compliant child. That evening, he went to apologize to the William family with a sincere attitude. He promised Mr. and Mrs. William that he would drive slower to avoid disturbing others. With Zachary's behavior, the Durhams quickly softened and thought this kid wasn't as bad as they had imagined. Mr. Durham even patted Zachary's shoulder, praising him for recognizing his mistake and apologizing. And thus, the previous tension was resolved peacefully. However, just a few weeks after the incident, the Durhams realized they had been deceived because Zachary completely disregarded his promise, continuing to rev his engine loudly in the neighborhood every day. Moreover, the engine noise was even louder than before. Clearly, Zachary's apology that day was nothing but an empty performance. In reality, Zachary harbored resentment towards the Durhams. Therefore, to get back at them, he made the situation worse. Zachary's actions also directly led to conflict between the Durham family and his grandparents. The reason being that Mr. Durham had asked Zachary's grandfather to advise his grandson. But when Zachary continued with his behavior, the grandfather did nothing to reprimand him. Thus, after this incident, the two families became enemies. 2 years after Zachary moved in with his grandparents, on the morning of April 6, 2020, while Mrs. Catherine Durham was walking in the neighborhood, a loud sound suddenly came from behind. She turned around to see a car speeding towards her, then abruptly stopping beside her. This unexpected situation startled Catherine. Upon realizing that Zachary was driving, she immediately condemned him. To show his contempt, Zachary pulled out his phone and recorded the entire incident. Additionally, he kept mocking Catherine. Furious at Zachary's words, Catherine went to the front of his car, threatening to remove his license plate, but ultimately did nothing and quietly walked away. After the incident ended, Zachary posted the video of Catherine scolding him on TikTok. Unexpectedly, the video quickly garnered over 3 million views. Zachary also received numerous private messages from the online community, encouraging him to go to the Durham's house to throw eggs, slash tires, or do other mischievous acts. Finally, Zachary experienced what it was like to become famous overnight. At the same time, he recognized something. It seemed that people online were very interested in this kind of content. Therefore, he planned to intentionally provoke the Durham family more often, aiming to create more controversial videos to post on TikTok, thereby attracting more viewers. One morning, while Mr. and Mrs. Durham were in their small front yard trimming the grass, Zachary drove by and deliberately honked continuously to get their attention. Not stopping there, he shouted, "Hello, Catherine," then floored the accelerator and sped off. Of course, he recorded this incident and posted it online. Once again, this video of his received a large number of views. Even many accounts commented that such quarrels were too boring and asked to see something more interesting. After reading these comments, Zachary thought they made sense. If he kept posting such mundane content, his account would gradually lose viewers. Therefore, he immediately replied, "No problem. Let me plan this carefully." Later, without a word, Mr. Durham went to stand in front of Zachary's house, waiting for him to return home to talk. As soon as Zachary drove up, Mr. Durham went directly to the car, calling through the window for him to get out for a talk. Zachary was no pushover. Despite Mr. Durham's calls, he ignored him and didn't get out of the car. As usual, Zachary recorded the entire incident and posted it online. After being harassed repeatedly by Zachary, the Durham family could no longer tolerate it and decided to report to the police. Subsequently, the police arrived at the scene, but only took Zachary's statement without imposing any penalties on him. Even after the police left, Zachary opened his car door and blew a sarcastic kiss towards the Durham family. However, the most frustrating part was that after this incident, he didn't retreat, but instead pursued his path of creating negative content even more aggressively. Zachary mistakenly thought that society endorsed his actions, especially with the high engagement on his controversial videos. This made him increasingly brazen. Initially, the Durham family considered Zachary just an immature kid doing foolish things. But later, they realized he was not naive at all. His provocative actions were part of his plan. Subsequently, a large number of TikTok users continued to encourage Zachary to engage in even more dangerous behaviors to taunt the Durham family. To protect their safety and rights, the Durham family decided to hire a lawyer to legally address Zachary's harassment. Surprisingly, when the Durham's lawyer filed a complaint against Zachary, the police refused, stating that the courts were not open during the epidemic. Therefore, they did not handle the case. This incident once again became the content of Zachary's video. He posted on TikTok the conversation between him and the police. In the video, Zachary showed the police the footage of him harassing the Durham family. The police assured him multiple times that they would not arrest him for this. After watching the video, the online community quickly left comments saying, "What are you waiting for? Give us more exciting videos." And finally, to meet his fans' demands, Zachary decided to harass the Durham family even more with more outrageous pranks. What used to be a few times a week became several times a day. For the Durham family, this was unbearable. Later, they contacted the police again and strongly condemned Zachary for his malicious harassment. Although the police used the epidemic as a reason to reject everything, Mr. Durham still asked them to record Zachary's behavior for future evidence, if necessary. And later, Zachary felt a bit worried, because he realized that the Durham family seemed determined to see this through to the end. Therefore, for the next few days, he didn't dare to bother them. However, no matter how worried he was, Zachary couldn't resist the call for updates from his fans. Unable to bear it anymore, he once again drove around the neighborhood, pondering content for his next video. At that moment, Zachary spotted Mr. Durham's son riding his bike in the community. He then started honking loudly from behind the child. When Mr. Durham's son turned around, Zachary suddenly accelerated, pretending to crash into him, scaring the boy out of his wits. Afterward, the son immediately told his parents about it. This incident crossed the line for Mr. and Mrs. Durham. Mr. Durham thought that if the law couldn't punish Zachary, he would take matters into his own hands to teach him a lesson. Later, Mr. Durham parked his truck directly in front of Zachary's grandparents' house, blocking him from driving in. However, at this moment, Zachary's wife, Sarah, was inside the house and saw the scene through the window. She immediately called her husband to warn him that Mr. Durham was waiting for him at the door. At the same time, Sarah suggested that Zachary call some friends to show the Durham family who was really in charge. Zachary then returned confidently with 2 accomplices. Mr. Durham's sons also ran out upon seeing this. Interestingly, this time Mrs. Durham, Catherine, also took out her phone to record everything that was about to happen to post online for people to see. When Zachary saw Catherine filming, he immediately lunged to grab her phone and threw it away. Seeing this, other members of the Durham family rushed over and started arguing. Then Zachary's accomplices joined in, fighting with the Durham family. At this point, Sarah, sitting inside, noticed the fight outside and quickly took out her phone to record the incident. However, the brawl didn't stop there. Even more, Zachary pulled out a stun gun from his pocket and moved to attack Mr. Durham's son. Seeing his son in danger, Mr. Durham didn't think twice and knocked Zachary down. At this moment, Zachary took out a knife from his pocket and stabbed Mr. Durham. When Mrs. Catherine realized Zachary was holding a knife, she immediately called the police. However, by then, Mr. Durham had already collapsed to the ground. Even in such a situation, Sarah was still engrossed in filming. The police quickly arrived after the report. Since there was a video recording of the entire incident, the police didn't need much time to investigate. Zachary was arrested, and Mr. Durham passed away not long after being taken to the hospital. Since this case was determined to be an unexpected conflict, Zachary only needed to pay $40,000 for bail to get out of jail. Of course, he was ordered by the court not to harass the Durham family and was not allowed to live with his grandparents anymore. Zachary and his wife had to move to Naples, Florida. Even after such a serious incident, Zachary didn't change his ways. While in Naples, he got into another conflict with a driver, even threatening them with a weapon. On February 4, 2021, the judge ordered Zachary to be detained in Cumberland County Jail until a final verdict was reached. From this, a lesson can be learned about the use of social media. With the development of information technology, the internet has become an indispensable part of our lives. Freedom of media has grown like mushrooms after rain. However, everything has 2 sides. We should control our behavior and words online. Like the story told in this episode, without encouragement and support from the online community, Zachary certainly wouldn't have gone so far into wrongdoing. In a way, those who cheered Zachary on were complicit in this crime. Story 2. The story unfolded at the beginning of 2024 in Machiya, Adachi, at a wealthy family's 3-story home. The owners of this house were Mr. Takahashi Yoshihiro, 55, the owner of a bar, and his wife, Mrs. Takahashi Kimi, 52, a homemaker. They had 2 children, one of whom was their eldest son, Takahashi Ichiro, 31, living with them. One evening, like any other, Takahashi Ichiro returned home after work. At that moment, he was unaware that his house had just experienced an event that would shock the entire nation. His parents had been brutally murdered and their bodies hidden right within the house. So what happened to the Takahashi couple? On January 16, 2024, at 8:30 p.m. in Adachi, Sumijukamaki, Takahashi Ichiro returned home after work. He parked his car in the driveway and got out. Takahashi Ichiro noticed his father's car parked next to his. This was the car his father had taken out in the morning before going to work. He remembered his father saying he would get it washed today, but it seemed that wasn't the case. Takahashi Ichiro thought his father might have forgotten, so he didn't think much of it. As he was about to enter the house, Takahashi Ichiro had strange thoughts. Normally at this time, his mother would be in the kitchen on the first floor preparing dinner, or his parents would be watching TV together in the living room, with the sounds reaching the front door. However, right now the entire house was silent, and no lights were on. Takahashi Ichiro entered the passcode for the door lock and stepped inside. He turned on the lights and bent down to take off his shoes at the entrance. While doing so, he noticed some red stains on the floor. After a closer inspection, he found some traces had been wiped away, causing Takahashi Ichiro to feel uneasy. He called out for his parents while moving further inside, but received no response. There were quite a few similar red stains on the first floor and the hallway as well. Afterward, Takahashi Ichiro hurriedly went upstairs to check the situation, but found no sign of his parents in any of the rooms on the second or third floor. He quickly took out his phone to call his parents, but both phones were off. Takahashi Ichiro called the bar where his father worked, or usually drank, but the staff said he hadn't been to the shop that day. He also called his sister, but she said she hadn't seen their parents that day. By then, it was 8:50 p.m., and Takahashi Ichiro suspected his parents had been kidnapped, so he called the police. Immediately after, the police arrived at Takahashi Ichiro's, setting up a perimeter to secure the scene, then began questioning Takahashi Ichiro for information. Takahashi Ichiro recounted that at 8 a.m. that day, he left the house for work. At that time, his parents were still at home, and there were no signs of anything unusual. Upon returning home at 8:30 p.m. that same day, he discovered his parents were missing. At the scene, investigators found several bloodstains on the floor, with no signs of forced entry through the windows or doors. The interior was tidy, showing no signs of ransacking, and no valuable items appeared to have been taken. However, the mobile phones of Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi were missing. Investigators collected blood samples from the floor and a knife at the scene. Quick tests revealed that most of the blood at the scene belonged to the Takahashi parents, but DNA from another man was found on the floor and the knife. Based on the traces found on the first floor, the police speculated that the Takahashi couple was attacked at the front door. Given the amount of blood at the scene, the police believed their chances of survival were slim. Even if they were alive, they would be seriously injured. However, regardless of the situation, finding them was the priority. Since none of the valuable assets in the house were taken, the police ruled out the possibility of this being a robbery. Given the wealth of the Takahashi family, the police considered the possibility of this being a kidnapping. If that were the case, the kidnapper could call at any moment. The police attempted to track the Takahashi couple's phones, but found no signal, only knowing that the last signal came from within the house. By the second day, Takahashi Ichiro had not received any calls from unknown numbers. Therefore, the likelihood of his parents being kidnapped seemed low. The police gathered footage from surveillance cameras around Takahashi Ichiro's house to trace his parents' whereabouts. According to this, both Mr. and Mrs. Takahashi Yoshihiro left the house that day. Not long after, Mr. Takahashi Yoshihiro returned home, while his wife came back at 4:30 p.m. After that, they did not appear on the surveillance footage anymore. The police questioned neighbors and staff from nearby shops, but all confirmed they had no knowledge of the couple's whereabouts after 4:30 p.m. on the day of the incident. At that time, Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro was running a bar near the Kinki train station. Takahashi Tokuhiro's bar had been in operation for over 20 years. Despite its modest size, it had many regular customers, primarily men around 50 years old. 2 years prior, he and his eldest son borrowed 37 million yen, equivalent to $240,000, to buy a house in Arajuku, Midoricho. There was a rumor that Takahashi Ichiro was actually the one whose name was on the house title. Knowing his son didn't have much money, Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro took on most of the loan for the bar business. Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro rarely socialized outside, so most of his acquaintances were customers at the bar. Everyone described Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro as a good-natured person. If a customer missed the last train home in the evening, he would not close the shop, allowing them to stay until morning. Apart from running the bar, Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro had a passion for cars, owning two, one of which he let his son use. Mrs. Takahashi Kimi, his wife, was a homemaker known for dressing youthfully. She was described as quite shy, not good at interacting with others, yet very polite. In the eyes of their neighbors, the Takahashi couple had good relations with everyone around them, making it unlikely they were harmed due to grudges. Therefore, the police turned their suspicion toward the person who reported the incident, the eldest son, Takahashi Ichiro. Some individuals told the police they had seen him arguing with his parents over money. Hence, the police suspected Takahashi Ichiro might have intentionally harmed his parents due to financial disputes. Upon facing police suspicions, Takahashi Ichiro became very angry. He admitted he had indeed borrowed money from his father, but their father-son relationship was very good. Moreover, since the house loan was not yet paid off, he couldn't act so foolishly as to harm his own parents. Additionally, several of Takahashi Ichiro's colleagues provided him with an alibi. On the day of the incident, Takahashi Ichiro was said to have been at work all day and only returned home after work in the evening. Therefore, suspicion towards him was dismissed. After reviewing the surveillance videos multiple times, the police discovered that not long after Takahashi Ichiro left his house that morning, a man and woman appeared near his home. Both were wearing masks and displayed suspicious behavior. It wasn't until the afternoon that they left. After leaving, the man placed a package in a nearby trash bin. From his appearance and attire, the man did not seem Japanese, but rather appeared to be from a Southeast Asian country. Subsequently, the investigators immediately searched and rummaged through that trash bin. Luckily, the garbage from that day had not yet been processed, and they found the package the man had discarded. Upon opening it, they discovered a set of blood-stained clothes inside. Therefore, the police quickly brought the clothes to the crime lab for examination. While waiting for the results, one officer speculated that since the Takahashi couple had not left the house after 4:30 p.m. that day, if kidnapping was ruled out, they might have been murdered with their bodies hidden by the killer. Next, the police focused on the Takahashi house and expanded their search. However, no signs of dug-up earth were found around the house. By the third day since the incident occurred, the police still had no leads on the whereabouts of the Takahashi couple. At 6 p.m. that day, the police were meticulously checking every corner of the Takahashi home. Notably, one officer, while in the downstairs hallway, detected a strange smell. He followed the scent to a room where the bathroom and toilet were on either side, separated by a sink in the middle. This officer looked around the room and found nothing particularly unusual, but there was still that odd smell. He tapped the floor beneath the sink and discovered a hollow space. In fact, such a design is not uncommon. Some houses, in the process of design and decoration, allocate space beneath the floor for storage or to facilitate the inspection of utilities. Then, the officer opened the floor and the sight in front of him was shocking. 2 large blue bundles with human shapes. He quickly called for his colleagues to assist. When they opened the 2 bundles, each contained a body. Their chests bore multiple stab wounds and their faces were disfigured. The police immediately informed Takahashi Ichiro. When he saw the 2 bodies, his body trembled uncontrollably as he recognized they were indeed his parents. The forensic results showed that Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro had over 10 stab wounds, while Mrs. Takahashi Kimi had 8. Both died from excessive blood loss. The time of death was determined to be January 16th, 2 days before they were discovered. This incident deeply shocked Takahashi Ichiro. He was no longer in the mood to work, so he took an extended leave from his company. All he wanted was to find the perpetrator to seek justice for his parents. On that very day, the investigation made a significant breakthrough. The analysis results confirmed that the blood on the clothes found in the trash bag belonged to the Takahashi couple. Thus, it seemed the killer had used those clothes to wipe the blood at the front door. The man and woman who discarded the blood-stained clothes in the trash were now prime suspects. Mr. Takahashi Tokuhiro's bar often had foreign customers. Therefore, the police questioned the staff, but no one recalled seeing the masked man from the surveillance footage. Takahashi Ichiro was called to view the surveillance video. Although the couple had their faces covered with masks and hats, he immediately recognized the woman on the screen as his ex-girlfriend, Morales, a Filipina who spoke Japanese fluently. Takahashi Ichiro suddenly remembered that on the day of the incident, he had spoken with this ex-girlfriend over the phone. At noon that day, Takahashi Ichiro unexpectedly received a call from Morales. They had broken up not long ago and had not been in contact since. Therefore, the call took Takahashi Ichiro by surprise. Since he was on his lunch break at work and it wouldn't affect his job, he answered. Soon after, Morales continually suggested they get back together. But Takahashi Ichiro told her they were over and could only be friends. Hearing this, Morales said nothing more and abruptly hung up. Afterward, Takahashi Ichiro didn't think much of it and returned to work. At 5 p.m., Takahashi Ichiro used his break time to call Morales, but she didn't answer. He then sent a message and got a reply half an hour later. After understanding the situation, the police saw something unusual and then asked in detail about their relationship. Takahashi Ichiro said he met Morales 3 years ago. She was a year younger than him. They decided to date and often went out together. Morales frequently talked about the hardships in her life and borrowed money from Takahashi Ichiro, who was always generous in lending her money. 2 years after they met, they decided to move towards marriage, and Takahashi Ichiro brought his girlfriend home. Initially, his parents liked Morales, but when he proposed marrying her and asked for financial support, they immediately opposed it. The reason was that Takahashi Ichiro's parents discovered Morales owed their son about 600,000 yen, equivalent to $4,000. Takahashi Ichiro's parents strongly opposed the relationship. Mrs. Takahashi Kimi even demanded Morales repay the money to her son immediately. Takahashi Ichiro suggested breaking up, but Morales refused and didn't want to return the money. They gradually grew apart and lost contact until noon on the day of the incident, when Takahashi Ichiro received a call from Morales. At that time, he thought his ex-girlfriend couldn't possibly be related to the case, so he didn't inform the police. After gathering Takahashi Ichiro's latest testimony, the police suspected Morales of exacting revenge on his ex-boyfriend's parents. From additional images collected from street surveillance around the area, they discovered Morales' apartment was just 450 meters away from Takahashi Ichiro's house, only a 10-minute walk. Remarkably, after the incident, Morales suddenly moved out of her apartment. The police questioned those around her, but no one knew where she had gone, nor could anyone provide an alibi for her. A close friend of Morales said he had seen her at a convenience store on the evening of the 17th. At that time, Morales was frantically searching the shelves, muttering to herself, "Medical tape, medical tape." Even when this friend approached to greet her, Morales barely noticed, acting as if something was wrong. After an extensive investigation, the police finally located Morales at a hotel in Fukushima Prefecture, and they quickly apprehended her. In the early morning of January 19th, Morales was arrested in the hotel. When asked where she was on the day of the incident, she replied that she was helping a Filipina friend find a house, and denied any involvement in the case. The police believed Morales didn't act alone. Even if she had the weapon, she couldn't have attacked the Takahashi couple by herself. The police guessed the man who threw the clothes in the trash was Morales' accomplice. According to forensic results, the victim's wounds were not from a novice. They were deep stabs directly into the heart. This required considerable strength, unlikely to be from Morales alone. A few days later, the police found the suspected man at a convenience store. He was wearing a hat covering his forehead, a mask on his face, and had a bandage on his right hand, indicating an injury. The police swiftly arrested him. After his arrest, under the pressure, he confessed everything to the police. His name was Della, 34 years old, who had known Morales since childhood. Last July, he had come to Japan as a technical intern to work at a construction company and lived in a small apartment in Chuchiura. Apart from Morales and a few Filipina friends, Della didn't know many people and barely interacted with anyone in his daily life. Della admitted he didn't know the Takahashi couple. The entire ordeal was initiated by Morales, and he was just an accomplice. Meanwhile, Morales maintained her silence. Although she refused to cooperate, the police, using the evidence and Della's testimony, pieced together the events. In the days leading up to the incident, Morales had been lurking in the shadows, observing the Takahashi family to learn their schedule. Notably, she had sneaked into their house several times. Then, She contacted Della Ha to share her plan. They prepared knives and plastic bags, waiting for the right moment to commit the crime. At 8 a.m. on the day of the incident, Takahashi Ichiro left for work. Within an hour, Morales and Della broke into the Takahashi house, hiding in one of the rooms. Morales could easily enter because she knew the door code from previous visits. That noon, while inside the Takahashi home, Morales called Takahashi Ichiro. This call was perhaps her final internal struggle. However, Takahashi Ichiro's cold and harsh response solidified her resolve. At 1 p.m., Mr. Takahashi Tokahiro left the house but returned shortly after. Upon entering, he was ambushed by the two. He tried to fight back, but was overwhelmed. After being repeatedly stabbed, Mr. Takahashi Tokahiro collapsed. At 4:30 p.m., Mrs. Takahashi Kimi returned home and was attacked right after entering. She had no time to react and was stabbed multiple times, falling to the ground. By 5 p.m., Takahashi Ichiro called Morales, but she didn't answer because she was busy with Della disposing of the bodies. To cover up, they wrapped the couple in plastic bags and hid them in the storage space under the first-floor sink. They took the couple's phones, turned them off, and discarded them somewhere. After finishing these tasks, it was 5:30 p.m. It was then that Morales replied to Takahashi Ichiro's message. At that moment, Takahashi Ichiro had no idea that his ex-girlfriend's message, "It's all over," signaled the tragic end for his parents. After that, Morales and Della changed out of their blood-stained clothes, did some cleanup, and used the clothes to wipe the floor. On their way out, they tossed the clothes into a nearby trash bin. What puzzled the police was why Morales and Della didn't break into the house in the morning to act immediately, but waited for the couple to leave and return before striking. Neither wanted to explain clearly, but one speculation is that Morales was momentarily hesitant and indecisive. Additionally, she might have been concerned that acting hastily would attract the neighbors' attention. Therefore, they sought a more opportune moment to carry out their plan. After committing the crime, Morales moved out of her old apartment to a hotel to evade arrest. During the struggle with Mr. Takahashi Tokahiro, Della injured his right hand. He didn't dare seek treatment at a nearby hospital, but went back to Sukiura to get treated at a local one. However, Della wasn't thinking clearly. He only covered up temporarily, but still went out to buy beer, later captured by surveillance cameras. The police, through their investigation, learned more about Morales' past. In November 2017, she flew to Japan on a budget airline from the Philippines. With her youthful beauty, Morales worked as a hostess at a bar in Asakusa. Most of the hostesses there were foreigners. After relevant authorities intensified oversight, the visas of bar employees were scrutinized more closely. Foreign entertainers and other performance workers coming to Japan would be issued entertainment visas, but many used these to work illegally. Therefore, since 2005, the authorities have tightened the verification of entertainment visas, making it harder to obtain them. Meanwhile, the process for tourist visas was also strict, with visitor and meeting visas having short durations. Marrying a Japanese citizen would reduce many restrictions, not only allowing freedom in job choice, but also extending the stay from a minimum of 6 months to up to 5 years. This was a dream for many foreigners. Thus, to get a long-term visa, Morales entered into a sham marriage with the bar owner's son, but it was more of a business partnership than a marriage. They were more like business partners. Several other girls at the bar also used fake marriages with the bar owner's son to secure green cards. One day, a customer named Kaminskas visited the bar and took notice of Morales. They sat on the sofa, chatting happily. Kaminskas was wealthy, sometimes spending up to 1 million yen in one night. Not long after, Kaminskas and Morales began dating, shopping for luxury items together, and going to bars 3 to 4 times a week. One day, Kaminskas discovered Morales had posted wedding photos on social media, and he immediately felt betrayed. Morales explained it was just a sham marriage to get a green card. She was pampered by Kaminskas, who was ready to gift her expensive items. However, she was unaware that Kaminskas was the mastermind behind a land transaction scam with Jokusuya Company, involving 55.5 billion yen. In the fall of 2018, Kaminskas fled to the Philippines but was arrested in December of that year. Ultimately, he was sentenced to 11 years in prison for fraud. The bar where Morales worked also fell into hardship. Her sham marriage for a green card was exposed. Notably, Morales had given birth to a boy during this fake marriage. At the end of last year, she was pregnant, but the fake husband, the bar owner's son, claimed the child wasn't his and didn't want to raise it. After the divorce, Morales lost her job and had to send the child back to the Philippines for her parents to look after. She then returned to Japan to continue her life. After the divorce, the bar owner's son no longer cared about her. After these tumultuous events, Morales went back to working at bars in Adachi, where her living conditions had significantly deteriorated compared to before. Not long after, Morales couldn't afford rent, frequently borrowing money from colleagues or customers. Gradually, she retreated from nightlife work and began working as a nurse's aide at a hospital in Tokyo. Due to financial pressure, she had to lower her living standards and became more discreet, but she still hoped to return to her previous luxurious life. In 2021, Morales met Takahashi Ichiro. She thought they could marry smoothly, but she didn't expect his parents to oppose it. What made her even more furious was that Takahashi Ichiro listened to his parents and suggested they break up. By January 2024, Morales was overwhelmed by debt, and finally, she exploded, blaming all her problems on Takahashi Ichiro's parents. She felt that if it weren't for them, all issues could have been resolved. But now she was living in such pain. When she thought about this, she sought out her old friend Della to commit the crime together, to take revenge on the couple. Although the motive was clear during the execution of the crime, neither confessed to being the one who killed the Takahashis. Both suspects pointed the finger at each other. Despite Della's DNA being on the weapon, this doesn't rule out Morales' involvement in the crime. However, based on the available evidence, it appears that only Della acted, with Morales assisting. When the media reported on the arrests, those who knew Morales said she looked very ordinary, not like someone capable of such a crime. One woman said she regretted not lending money to Morales. If she had agreed, then Morales might have resolved her crisis, and perhaps wouldn't have turned to crime. Moreover, some researchers studying the relationship between Morales and Takahashi Ichiro believe she still had feelings for her ex-boyfriend. Otherwise, she wouldn't have contacted him before committing the crime. If it was just about resolving her conflict with Takahashi's parents, there would be no need for such brutality. Therefore, some believe that her emotional drive to commit the crime was certainly fueled by her complex feelings for Takahashi Ichiro. The love-hate relationship stirred by countless rumors from the outside, the police are still making relentless efforts, hoping Morales will cooperate in the investigation to reveal more information. Unfortunately, she has consistently refused to cooperate. 2 months after the incident, in March 2024, Morales and Della were charged with murder. Up to this point, the trial has not yet begun, and Morales remains silent. Story 3. This story begins with an unexpected encounter between a monk and a live-streaming sales idol, leading to an illicit relationship that ultimately spiraled into a blackmail case. Once exposed, the tale dominated hot search trends on Chinese social media. The incident involved the abbot of a prominent temple in Chengdu, who dated a married female streamer and was subsequently extorted for 3.2 million yuan, equivalent to over $450,000. The scandal even made headlines on China Central Television's news broadcast. How could a monk and a woman who live stream sales come to know each other and start a romance? Why did the woman manage to extract such a large sum from the man? The protagonists of this story are a married couple in China who ran a business selling rosewood furniture. Rosewood, also known as red sandalwood, is a rare and precious material, making it significantly more expensive than average wood. Furniture crafted from rosewood is typically reserved for affluent customers. Before the COVID-19 pandemic hit, the couple's business thrived. However, as the crisis unfolded, they faced mounting challenges. With the rise of social media, they decided to shift from in-person sales to online commerce. The husband, surnamed Chen, took charge of coordinating with workshops, placing orders, and handling related tasks. His wife, Kai, became an online salesperson. To grow their business, she diligently honed her sales skills and live-streamed daily from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. To attract viewers, Kai also learned makeup and beauty techniques to enhance her appearance on camera. In a short time, she became a well-known streamer in the rosewood furniture niche. In late 2020, a male customer caught Kai's attention by consistently purchasing large quantities of rosewood furniture. He quickly became her top buyer during live streams, indicating he was extraordinarily wealthy. Shortly after, this customer sent Kai a private message requesting to connect on WeChat. To maintain a relationship with this VIP client, Kai agreed. The two began chatting on WeChat. Initially, their conversations were strictly professional, revolving around buyer-seller interactions. But as many say, can there truly be pure friendship between a man and a woman? Their exchanges grew more frequent, and sometimes, an offhand remark from one would stir feelings in the other. It's unclear whether Kai made the first move, or if the man was already drawn to her beauty, femininity, and eloquence as a streamer, but their relationship progressed rapidly. The allure of a wealthy man who bought items without glancing at the price was undeniably strong for Kai. 2 months later, after a period of tentative flirtation, both could no longer suppress their emotions and were eager to meet in person. On February 24, 2021, Kai traveled alone from Fujian to Chengdu to meet her lover. They arranged to rendezvous at a luxury hotel. Upon arrival, Kai discovered that her dream lover was a monk, yet this monk was unconcerned with monastic rules. Thus, a married woman and a man of the cloth, unable to control their desires, took their relationship further. Once there was a first time, a second followed. The illicit couple continued communicating via WeChat. Little did they imagine that this clandestine affair would lead to a blackmail case that would rock society. In April 2022, Kai's husband, Qian, stumbled upon secret messages on his wife's phone. Discovering her infidelity, Qian was furious. Naturally, who could remain calm upon learning that their partner of many years had deceived them for over a year? Immediately, Qian sought revenge. He demanded that his wife provide all information about the man. Fearing the collapse of her family, Kai urged her husband not to confront him or resort to violence, explaining that the man's identity was highly unusual. Regaining his composure, Qian turned to the internet to investigate this man. It turned out that he, too, was a figure of wealth and influence. Kai's lover was a monk surnamed Zhang. He had graduated from the Department of Buddhist Studies at the Minzu University of China. In 2005, he became the abbot of a renowned temple in Pujiang County, Chengdu, Sichuan Province. To rise to the position of abbot, a monk must meet stringent requirements, including at least 15 years of monastic life and strict adherence to Buddhist precepts. At that time, Zhang also held significant roles. He was a member of the 13th Sichuan Provincial Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, vice chairman of the Sichuan Buddhist Association, and chairman of the Pujiang County Buddhist Association. The question arises, how could the abbot of a temple possess such immense wealth that he could repeatedly purchase rosewood furniture to catch the attention of an online seller? Qian discovered the temple where Zhang served. It was the Shixiang Temple, located within the Shixiang Lake Ecological Area in Chongqing City, near the Chengya Expressway. This is the only tourist site in China with an entrance directly adjacent to an expressway, making it highly accessible. The temple was originally constructed in 225 AD during the Shu Han period, and once served as a retreat for General Wei Yang. Shixiang Temple is also believed to be a sacred site where deities converge. In 1992, the Pujiang County government officially granted Shixiang Temple permission to conduct Buddhist activities. Upon uncovering his wife's lover's background, Qian's anger suddenly dissipated. He even felt a hint of excitement, seeing a rare opportunity to make money right before him. Qian devised a meticulous plan for profit. Little did Zhang know that the reputation, power, and wealth he had built over the years would crumble to dust because of a woman. The illicit affair between the monk and the married woman had lasted over a year. Had no one exposed it, their lives might have continued undisturbed. But one day, events spiraled beyond the lover's control. Chen told his wife, "In this world, only money doesn't lie. Making money is the only thing that matters." He worked to convince Chen to follow a carefully calculated script. While it's unclear what Chen thought at the time, she ultimately teamed up with her husband to profit from her lover. Less than 2 months after their last meeting, Chen arranged another rendezvous with her lover. Despite knowing that their relationship had been discovered by Chen's husband, Chen agreed to meet. On April 27, 2022, Monk Chen traveled from Chengdu, Sichuan, to a hotel at a hot spring resort in Shenyu County, Fujian Province. Unbeknownst to him, he was step-by-step walking into a trap set by Kai and her husband. Chen instructed his wife to maintain an intimate relationship with Zhang, inviting her lover to Fujian for a trip. Secretly, Chen installed a hidden camera in the hotel room to record Kai and Zhang's intimate moments. To ensure the image quality, Chen even stayed in a separate room, monitoring the live video feed from start to finish. Of course, Kai's acting skills were impeccable. From start to finish, she gave her lover no reason to suspect anything. When Zhang cheerfully parted ways with his mistress to return to Chengdu, Kai and Chen were equally satisfied with their accomplishment. 2 months later, the couple traveled to Chengdu, where Zhang lived and worked, armed with the video. Kai informed Zhang that she was in Chengdu and arranged to meet him at a hotel. Without any suspicion, Zhang eagerly arrived at the rendezvous. But when the monk opened the hotel room door with anticipation, he froze. Inside, it wasn't just Kai waiting for him. Chen was there too. Confronted by his lover's husband, Zhang calmly denied the affair. But everything was unfolding according to Chen's plan. Presented with the uncensored full HD video Chen provided, capturing every intimate moment between him and Kai at the hot springs, Zhang fell silent. There's a saying, with money you can even buy a deity. Zhang immediately offered 1 million yuan, roughly $140,000. After some back and forth, Chen agreed to 2 million yuan, about $280,000, with half of it in rosewood furniture. Without hesitation, Zhang pulled out his phone and transferred the money to Chen. But the story didn't end there. After receiving the payment, Chen began to think. Perhaps Monk Zhang truly wasn't short on cash. In just a few minutes, he had readily transferred 2 million yuan to the couple, suggesting his account likely held at least 10 million yuan. In February 2023, Chen traveled alone to Sichuan to confront Zhang again. Sensing trouble, Zhang adamantly refused to meet. Undeterred, Chen contacted one of the monk's associates, delivering a message. If Zhang didn't show up, Chen would expose all of the abbot's actions online. At this point, Zhang grew deeply anxious and sent someone to negotiate with Chen. Ultimately, Zhang agreed to pay the couple an additional 3.2 million yuan, approximately $450,000, in 3 installments. In the first installment, he paid Chen 1.2 million yuan, about $170,000. Over the next 2 years, Zhang would pay 1 million yuan annually, roughly $140,000 each year. This time, however, the abbot didn't hand over the money as easily as he had the previous 2 million. He demanded that Chen sign an agreement. Though the income from their furniture business was substantial, Chen had never seen money come so effortlessly. He remarked, "As long as the money is paid, I'll sign anything." In an instant, Chen had 3.2 million yuan in hand. With the potential for an additional 2 million in the future, he stood to gain a total of 5.2 million yuan, equivalent to over $730,000. But while Chen was reveling in the joy of reaping rewards without effort, one day the police came knocking at his door. What had happened? Once the agreement was finalized, it seemed the matter had been settled. Neither side wanted to escalate the situation further. But perhaps Monk Zhang had a change of heart. After years of studying Buddhist teachings, he realized that money wasn't the issue. Human greed was. If this continued, the other party might never stop demanding more. This nightmare would never end. At this point, he thought of the signed agreement he held, bearing Chen's signature. He decided to report the matter to the police. Swiftly, Chen and Kai were arrested. The three faced each other in court. The prosecution argued that the couple had committed fraud and extortion, extracting 3.2 million yuan, approximately $450,000. This substantial sum constituted a serious violation of criminal law. Qian was identified as the primary perpetrator, with Kai as an accomplice. What about Abbot Zhang? Clearly, it was unusual for the abbot of a temple to possess such vast wealth. He had previously spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Kai's products, and readily transferred millions of yuan to Qian in mere moments. Was all of this the monk's legitimate income, misappropriated temple donations, or borrowed funds from relatives and friends? The results of this investigation have not yet been disclosed. However, shortly thereafter, Zhang was suspended from his position as abbot and stripped of his other titles. This incident once again raised public questions about online behavior, the ethics of monks, and transparency in managing public funds. From a human nature perspective, all three individuals displayed profound greed. The monk violated his vows, succumbing to worldly desires. The immense wealth he possessed also sparked suspicion. Kai, the streamer, didn't hesitate to betray her marriage for a wealthy, online lover. As for Qian, Kai's husband, his actions knew no bounds. A man willing to let his spouse engage in such dishonorable acts for profit is truly beyond words. In the end, all three became a laughingstock in society. Story 4. Sully rose to fame at the tender age of 15 and was affectionately dubbed the nation's princess by South Korean fans. However, at the age of 25, she passed away in her own home. Following her sudden death, a series of prominent Korean celebrities shared heartfelt messages reflecting on the loss of the young singer, Sully. Behind these tributes lay a common sentiment among artists about the pervasive issue of cyberbullying, a silent enemy draining the spirits of many young talents. Sully's departure unveiled a terrifying glimpse into the pressures of the entertainment industry. So why did a young star like her meet such an abrupt end? Now, let's travel back to 2019 to better understand this incident. On October 14, 2019, Sully's manager attempted to contact her but received no response. Concerned, he rushed to her private residence in Songnam, Yeongjdo Province, to check on her. From the outside, nothing seemed amiss, but upon entering, he discovered that Sully had passed away. Following the report, South Korean police quickly arrived at the scene. After an investigation, they found no signs of forced entry, ruling out the possibility of foul play. Sully had taken her own life at the peak of her youth. As a top-tier star, a former member of the popular girl group FX, and a participant in numerous films and TV shows, her career path had been notably smooth. More importantly, she was only 25 years old, a time when her career and life were just beginning to flourish. So what drove her to end her own life? Sully, whose real name was Choi Jin-ri, was born on March 29, 1994, in Busan, South Korea, into a family with 2 older brothers and 1 younger brother. From a young age, Sully was bright and endearing. Before her official debut, she had acted in films as a child actress, though in minor roles. During one of these filming sessions, a recruiter from SM Entertainment spotted Sully on set and invited her to audition at the company. SM Entertainment is one of South Korea's leading entertainment agencies, and being developed there is a dream for many. In 2005, after multiple rounds of auditions, 11-year-old Sully officially joined SM Entertainment as a trainee. She underwent 4 years of rigorous training and was specially nurtured and invested in by the company. During SM Entertainment's 10th anniversary celebration, Sully was chosen to represent the trainees, standing on stage alongside the company's founder. In the years that followed, she diligently balanced her studies with acting in various films, earning widespread praise. On September 5, 2009, after 4 years as a trainee, Sully officially debuted as a member of the girl group, FX. It's well known in the South Korean entertainment industry that becoming a debuted artist as a trainee is no easy feat. Some spend 7 to 8 years in training. When Sully debuted, she was just 15 years old. The group FX, consisting of 5 members, Victoria, Amber, Luna, Crystal, and Choi Sully, burst onto the scene with youthful energy, making them stand out and gain popularity in South Korea. Shortly after their debut, the group won the Rookie Award and went on to claim accolades such as the Popular Group Award at the 8th Korean Music Awards, the Best Dance Performance by a Female Group at the 2012 Mama Awards, and many others. These achievements earned Sulli a massive fan base. SM Entertainment also heavily promoted Sulli, casting her in leading roles in films. Her acting in various projects left an incredibly positive impression, and with the support of industry seniors, Sulli became a darling of the South Korean entertainment scene. In the public eye, Sulli was an innocent, sweet, and lovable girl, with flawless white skin and a gentle beauty, the epitome of a goddess in the hearts of many fans. But no one could have anticipated that, at the height of her career, an event would occur that completely altered her life. In July 2013, her romantic relationship was exposed. At the time, Sulli was only 20 years, but she was in a relationship with a man 14 years her senior, singer Choiza. In reality, in the South Korean entertainment industry, to maintain fan adoration, idols are expected to remain single. Thus, a ban on dating has become an unspoken rule in Korean entertainment agencies. This phenomenon isn't unique to South Korea. Worldwide, when idols are discovered to be in relationships or married, fans often feel disappointed. When fans feel deceived, they may lash out with criticism, threats, or even verbal abuse directed at their idols. Although Sulli's management company quickly clarified that she and Choiza were just friends, in August 2013, Sulli herself publicly confirmed their relationship. Rumors circulated that someone had found their wallet and discovered several dating photos of the couple, leading to the exposure of their relationship. In truth, photos of celebrity couples aren't uncommon in the entertainment industry. If the management company handles the situation tactfully, things usually settle down. However, this time was different because Sulli personally confirmed the relationship, making the situation far more serious. From then on, anti-fans relentlessly attacked Sulli online. When she sought medical attention due to feeling unwell, anti-fans spread rumors that her personal life was chaotic and that she had contracted a gynecological disease. When Sulli ate more than usual, they speculated she was pregnant and debated who the father might be. When she showed signs of fatigue, rumors immediately surfaced that she was using drugs or drinking. These baseless rumors constantly surrounded her. At just 20 years old, Sulli faced immense pressure. Her decision to publicly confirm her relationship had disrupted her company's plans, foreshadowing a severe impact on her career. Moreover, she endured online harassment and insults from fans, making her life incredibly difficult. On July 25, 2014, SM Entertainment announced that Sulli was experiencing a crisis, both physically and mentally, due to the prolonged malicious criticism and unfounded rumors. Consequently, the company decided to suspend all her activities to allow her time to rest. Everyone understood that Sulli had been frozen by the company, with no clear indication of when she might return. On August 7, 2015, Sulli announced she would focus on acting and decided to leave FHX. From that moment, Sulli was seemingly freed from all constraints and began living a free life. The online community continuously mocked her, accusing her of neglecting the group due to blind love. Subsequently, she frequently shared images on Instagram, including many provocative photos and even intimate ones with her boyfriend. This sudden change was too abrupt for many fans to accept immediately. Previously, Sulli had cultivated an image of an innocent, adorable girl, but she suddenly shifted to a mature, sensual style. This sparked a major controversy among the South Korean public. Additionally, Sulli took on roles in films with bold scenes. Gradually, the princess of SM Entertainment became the black sheep of the entertainment industry. Despite heavy criticism, Sulli tried to face it bravely. Even with a busy schedule, she maintained a bright smile and an optimistic spirit. Though Sulli struggled to cope with the pressure, her boyfriend couldn't handle it, and ultimately, they broke up in March 2017. For Sulli, who had already endured so much, this breakup was truly hard to accept. After the breakup, Sulli once shared, "I've been deeply hurt by those around me. I started feeling insecure. My closest friends have left me. At that time, I completely broke down and no longer wanted to open up to anyone. It's worth noting that she was only 23 then. For many, this is still an age of being sheltered by parents, not yet facing the harsh realities of society. Despite the criticism and online verbal abuse, Sully didn't choose to retreat. She continued working diligently. She participated in TV shows and tried to live better. Sully loved sharing her personal life on social media. She posted a photo of herself without a bra on Instagram, instantly becoming the center of public scrutiny. Many online users harshly criticized her. In a program, Sully explained that she didn't wear a bra because she believed underwire bras could harm her health, so she chose not to. During a live stream, people insulted and criticized her for not wearing a bra. No matter what Sully posted on Instagram or said during live streams, she faced relentless attacks and criticism. Social media overflowed with malicious comments, gradually pushing Sully into depression. She attended weekly therapy, but this was only revealed after the incident. Due to her high self-esteem, Sully initially didn't disclose her depression. She had asked her company to address the hateful comments, but SM Entertainment remained indifferent and didn't intervene. In her final months, Sully's condition worsened. Sometimes she live-streamed in a dazed state. Other times, she suddenly went live in the middle of the night with teary eyes, saying nothing. Those who cared about her grew deeply concerned. Sully once posted a photo of a dismembered Barbie doll on Instagram and shared a video of grilling eel, dubbing the eel's voice herself, saying, help me," before laughing. These actions led many online to suspect Sully was struggling mentally. During a live stream with friends, a man at a nearby table secretly took her photo and approached her with his phone. Instead of refusing, Sully panicked, hugged her head, and curled up under the table. This incident showed she was in a state of extreme distress. Cyberbullying had left her fragile and on the brink of collapse. Yet instead of receiving empathy, she continued to face harsh criticism, with some even saying she was just seeking attention. In the early hours of October 6, 2019, just a week before her death, Sully said during a live stream, "I don't like cursing others. It's really scary. If only people could say kinder things, it would be so much better." She hoped fans and the online community would treat her more gently, instead of criticizing and cursing her. At the end of the live stream, she looked directly into the camera with tear-filled eyes, perhaps a plea for help. Sully also once publicly shared, "I don't know what the future holds. I'm exhausted, but no one listens to me. If I say I'm struggling right now, no one understands." Over a prolonged period of verbal attacks and cyberbullying, Sully grew increasingly fragile and broken. After multiple cries for help went unanswered, she ultimately chose the most extreme escape. On October 14, 2019, Sully ended her life in her home. She left no suicide note, and people only learned from her diary that her final days were extremely difficult. From a celebrated South Korean star, she gradually fell into a dire state under the weight of online criticism. This unfolded in front of millions. Despite Sully's attempts to send distress signals, no one paid attention. After her death, numerous speculations about her reasons emerged, with various information circulating online. To uncover the truth, South Korea's SBS produced a special program about Sully postmortem, aiming to clarify what happened to her and why she reached this tragic end. The program tracked down and interviewed several individuals who had left malicious comments about Sully, conducting undercover interviews with them. One person said, "I posted a hateful comment about Sully over 100 weeks ago. If I'd known she would pass away, I would have apologized." Another remarked, "I thought that even though Sully was a girl, she was stronger than many men. So I didn't think my insults mattered. She could handle that kind of hurt." Yet another stated, "If you can't handle these things, how can you be a celebrity? Being a public figure means accepting this. If you can't take it, don't be an artist." Such opinions were common, and those who wrote these hateful comments didn't recognize their own wrongdoing. They believed the issue lay with Sully, and that she should endure it. Additionally, media outlets and newspapers published negative stories about Sully, SBS attempted to locate the reporters behind these articles and discovered that most were written by anonymous contributors, with much of the content fabricated to attract attention. These reporters primarily wrote for profit without factual basis, solely to boost clicks. The Korean Journalists Association noted that anonymous reporters produce articles for money, unconcerned with the truth. South Korean media outlets also failed to moderate these articles because they too relied on high traffic. The more widely a story spread, the greater the fame of the media outlet and the more advertising revenue it generated. Although the TV station contacted some of these anonymous reporters, they still didn't acknowledge their wrongdoing, believing their articles were inconsequential. These malicious comments and negative articles were part of the problem. Sully, a young woman not yet 25, lost everything, from her freedom to love to her very life, due to relentless social media attacks over the years. Cyberbullying destroyed a young talent and led to a tragedy. No one is innocent in this case. All those who posted hateful comments about Sully bear responsibility. Her sudden departure, and the painful journey from when she began struggling until her death, unfolded before everyone's eyes. Sully's passing sent shockwaves through South Korea, leaving her family unable to accept the reality. Despite her difficult life, Sully never showed despair to her family. A month before her death, she wrote in her diary that she wanted to be someone who brought warmth to others and thanked everyone. Even amidst criticism and insults, she strove to be a figure people could love. After her death, Sully received condolences and prayers from family and friends. Regrettably, when news of her passing broke, South Korean media and artists collectively expressed deep sorrow. Many held memorial events, and social media overflowed with praise for Sully. It seemed all the prior criticism and insults had been forgotten and forgiven. What bitter irony! While Sully was alive, she endured harsh criticism. But after her death, the world was filled with love and support for her. This prompts questions about the unfairness of the world. Even if she received praise and affection now, Sully could no longer feel it. In her final moments, she only experienced despair, pain, and helplessness. After her death, interviews with her from before her passing surfaced. She had once pleaded, "Please love me more, and I hope the audience will love me more too." Could this have been a cry for help from Sully? It seems she did nothing wrong. She only wanted to live more freely. Sully's best friend, Gu Hara, wept profusely, and during a live stream, vowed to keep living for Sully. Tragically, not long after, on November 24, 2019, Gu Hara was found dead in her home in Gangnam, Seoul, at the age of 28. Some speculated that the consecutive deaths of Sully and Gu Hara might be linked to South Korean conglomerates, but sadly, with no concrete evidence, this remains mere conjecture. People once hoped Sully would become a major star in South Korea's pressure-filled entertainment industry, but at 25, after months of struggling to please everyone, she chose to leave, freeing herself from her anguish. Story 5. In 1969, the United States was rocked by two shocking cases. 3 teenage girls vanished mysteriously right in front of their homes. The scenes showed no signs of a struggle or altercation. Despite thorough investigations, the police found no leads. The search dragged on for years, yet the identity of the perpetrator remained a mystery. It wasn't until a 15-year-old girl suddenly reappeared that the shadowy culprit was finally brought into the light of day. So what exactly happened that year? Sophia Silva, a 16-year-old, was a well-behaved and obedient girl. After returning home from school, she would immediately sit down to do her homework. The neighborhood where Sophia lived was known for its safety. So many kids often studied outside on their front porches. Sophia was no exception. Her older sister, Pam, 5 years her senior, preferred to study indoors. At the time, their parents were still at work. This routine played out daily with nothing seemingly out of the ordinary. But that day, something unexpected happened. After studying inside for a while, Pam felt tired and decided to step outside to chat with her sister and take a break. But as soon as she walked out the door, she was stunned to find Sophia gone. On the chair, there was only a half-empty can of grape soda and a few school books. Pam immediately called out for her sister around the area, but there was no response. A sense of unease crept in. Knowing Sophia well, Pam was certain that if her sister had to leave for any reason, she would have told her first. For Sophia to disappear so silently, with no signs of a struggle or disturbance in the front yard, was deeply unusual. Pam quickly alerted their parents. Rushing home, Sophia's parents fanned out across the neighborhood to search, while also calling her friends. But everyone said they hadn't seen Sophia since school ended. Some began to speculate. Could Sophia, at 16, be in a rebellious phase and have run away from home? Her parents, however, dismissed this idea. They knew Sophia as a good girl with excellent grades, and their family was always harmonious and loving. Why would she run away? Unwilling to entertain such thoughts further, they immediately contacted the police. Upon arrival, the police found the scene unusually pristine. No evidence or clues remained. It didn't even resemble a crime scene. Neighbors confirmed they heard no unusual sounds and saw no strangers in the area. With little to go on, the police could only launch an urgent search in the surrounding area to avoid losing any potential leads. Law enforcement quickly mobilized to comb the neighborhood, joined by Sophia's family and friends. They scoured nearby fields and forests, but found nothing suspicious. In the weeks that followed, missing person flyers were posted in local shopping centers, then spread to nearby towns, and eventually blanketed the entire United States. Yet, despite this massive search effort, no leads emerged. As time ticked by, the hope of finding Sophia alive grew slimmer. Then, as many had feared, over a month after her disappearance, a worker at a nearby farm stumbled upon an unusual blue blanket while passing through a desolate swamp. A foul, pungent odor emanated from it. Sophia's disappearance had already become a sensational event in the area, so the worker promptly notified the police. When authorities arrived and opened, they found Sophia inside. The area where Sophia's family lived had long been known for its peace and safety, but now, the abduction and brutal murder of a teenage girl right in front of her home sent the community into a state of utter panic. Everyone was gripped by fear, desperate for the police to catch the culprit and restore calm. Under intense public pressure, the police soon identified a suspect, a 44-year-old man named Carl Roche. Carl had long been on law enforcement's radar due to his extensive criminal history. Not only had he been arrested for breaking into homes and committing serious traffic violations, but he also had a record of harassment and public indecency, clear signs of a dangerous, deviant personality. Some local residents reported seeing Carl speaking with Sophia prior to her disappearance. Based on this information, the police searched Carl's residence and personal belongings. During the search of his car, they discovered several blue fabric fibers. After sending the fibers to a lab for analysis, the results showed they matched the material of the blanket that had been wrapped around Sophia's body. With this evidence, the police concluded there was reasonable grounds to identify Carl as the perpetrator who killed Sophia. The local community praised the police for solving the case quickly, alleviating the pervasive anxiety that gripped the neighborhood. The area slowly returned to its previous state of calm. As for Carl, he was detained and awaited the court's final verdict in jail. But just when everything seemed to be resolving smoothly, the case took an unexpected turn. Two other girls, Kristen, 15, and Kati Lisk, 12, also vanished right in front of their home, sending shockwaves through the community once again. Upon receiving the report, the police quickly arrived at the scene, but the situation mirrored Sophia's case. No clues, no signs of a struggle, no witnesses. Nearby residents confirmed they heard no unusual noises and saw no suspicious individuals. With no leads, law enforcement launched another large-scale search to track down the two girls. 5 days later, the police found Kristen and Kati's bodies in a river near the crime scene. The striking similarities to Sophia's case were immediately apparent. The same method, the same cause of death, the same disposal technique, and even the same location for concealing the bodies. If this were a copycat crime, the level of detail in the replication would be nearly impossible. Thus, the police were almost certain that the same person was responsible for both cases. However, the man previously identified as the culprit, Carl, was still in custody awaiting trial. This development left the police in a deeply perplexing position. The emergence of this new case made it clear that Carl was innocent. Under public pressure and a duty to the truth, the police were forced to reopen Sophia's case and review the entire investigation. In doing so, they uncovered a grave error. The lab's earlier conclusion that the blue fibers in Carl's car matched the blanket around Sophia was completely wrong. In reality, the two materials only appeared similar on the surface. They were not identical in physical or chemical composition. It was then that the police recalled Carl's adamant claim, "I've been framed." His plea of innocence turned out to be entirely justified. The police immediately dropped all charges against Carl and officially relaunched the investigation to find the real perpetrator. In this new investigation, they successfully extracted DNA from the victims' bodies, noting the killer's sophistication, leaving no traces at the crime scenes. The police suspected this was the work of a seasoned criminal, likely with a prior record. They began comparing the DNA sample to profiles of individuals with criminal records in the national database. However, with 400,000 samples to test, they still found no match. Furthermore, the national DNA database contained no record of the suspect. Facing a dead end, the police offered a $150,000 reward, a substantial sum at the time, to encourage the public to provide valuable information. While the enticing reward drew many tipsters, unfortunately, all leads turned out to be false or useless, offering no help to the investigation. The case stretched on for years with no progress. The cases of Sophia, Kristen, and Katie officially went cold, becoming unresolved mysteries in the region. Time passed relentlessly, and by 2002, 6 years after the first case, a surprising breakthrough emerged. In the town of Lexington, South Carolina, 15-year-old Kara Robinson was playing with her best friend, Heather, at her home. Both girls loved outdoor activities, and that day, they planned to relax by a nearby lake. Before leaving, Heather called her mother to ask if there was anything she needed to do beforehand. Hearing that her daughter was going to the lake, a common activity in the area, Heather's mother felt at ease. She only reminded Heather to water the plants in the front yard before heading out. While Heather went to shower and get ready, Kara offered to water the plants for her. As she watered the plants, Kara noticed an unfamiliar car driving by the house. At first, she didn't think much of it, but when the car turned around and came back, a sense of unease crept in. A strange man stepped out of the vehicle. He was neatly dressed, fairly good-looking, and holding a stack of magazines. He approached Kara, seemingly wanting to ask her something. As Kara reached out to take a magazine, the man suddenly pulled a handgun from beneath the stack, pressed it against her throat, and coldly ordered her not to resist, threatening to shoot if she did. Faced with this dangerous situation, Kara realized the man was not only strong but armed. She had no chance to fight back. To preserve her life, she complied with his demands. The abductor forced Kara into a plastic storage bin in the trunk of his car and quickly drove away from the scene. The entire ordeal unfolded in complete silence, with no struggle or noise. Meanwhile, Heather, still in the shower, had no idea what had happened. When she finished and stepped outside, she found only the watering hose lying on the ground. Kara was nowhere to be seen. Since no abductions like this had ever occurred in the area, Heather didn't immediately suspect foul play. She assumed Kara had left suddenly for an urgent matter, without time to leave a message. But the reality was far grimmer. Kara was trapped in the plastic bin in the back of a stranger's car, being taken to an unknown location. Astonishingly, the 15-year-old didn't cry or panic. Instead, she remained remarkably calm and composed. Even in the darkness of the trunk, Kara began to focus, analyzing her situation, and devising a plan to escape her captor. She understood that her best chance of survival was to gather as much information as possible about the abductor and her surroundings. Trapped in the pitch-black bin, she relied on her hearing to observe her environment. She noted every time the car stopped, every turn it made, and the sounds of the world outside. After driving for a while, the man stopped the car. Kara felt the bin being pulled out of the trunk. She heard bustling noises around her, perhaps a public area with people passing by. Then she heard the bin being dragged across a cement surface, followed by a distinct thud as the surface beneath her seemed to change, likely to a wooden floor. Kara deduced that the thud was the sound of the bin being dragged over a threshold, indicating she had been brought into a house. The door slammed shut behind her, confirming her suspicion. After a few moments of silence, the man opened the lid of the bin, his voice calm, showing no signs of anger or haste. Kara pretended to be submissive and cooperative, knowing that her chance to escape would only come once she was unbound. When the abductor untied her, Kara maintained a humble and gentle demeanor, showing no signs of resistance or intent to flee. Seeing her apparent compliance, the man began to lower his guard. Seizing the opportunity, Kara initiated a conversation with him. Kara carefully engaged the man in conversation to gather information, while subtly reassuring him that she had no intention of escaping, playing the role of a well-behaved child. She understood that by making him feel safe, she could buy time, learn more about him and her surroundings, and find a way to escape. With a rare clarity and courage for a 15-year-old, Kara was slowly turning a dire situation into a chance for survival. What surprised her, however, was how this stranger seemed oddly friendly, his tone gentle and polite, far from the image of a ruthless criminal she had imagined. Yet he was extremely cautious. During their conversation, he repeatedly asked Kara for personal details, her home address, full name, her parents' names, even her boyfriend's name, and he meticulously recorded everything in a notebook. Kara, in turn, seized the opportunity to cleverly ask him questions. While the man didn't shy away from talking, he was tight-lipped about critical details like his real name or address, revealing nothing of substance. Later, Kara pretended to stroll around the house and offered to help clean up, but in reality, she was secretly observing, searching for any clues about his identity or location. Her persistence paid off. While rummaging near the refrigerator, she found a card with his dentist's name and another name that might belong to his personal doctor. She also recalled that the plastic bin she'd been trapped in had a serial number, and in the bathroom, she spotted a comb with several long red hairs. Even more telling, Kara noticed a few military photos on display, featuring the man indicating he had once been a serviceman. She carefully memorized all these details, hoping they could one day serve as evidence to expose his crimes. But her greatest fear soon became reality. The abductor began showing signs of intent to assault her. Typically, abductions of young girls have one of two motives, money or sexual intent. Since he hadn't demanded a ransom, Kara realized she was about to be violated. Though filled with rage and anguish, Kara didn't resist. She knew that to survive, she had to endure. After committing his depraved act, the perpetrator shifted to psychological manipulation. He turned on the TV and said, "Let's see if you're on the news. If no one's looking for you, it means no one cares about you." In reality, Kara had only been missing for about 8 hours, hardly enough time for her disappearance to make the news. He continued his mental assault. "If you go to the police now, everyone will know you've been violated. Do you think you'll ever be able to face anyone again after that?" He used these words to shame Kara, hoping to crush her spirit and ensure her silence. But he underestimated her. Despite being just 15, Kara possessed an unyielding will and a fierce fighting spirit. She refused to break as he hoped. In her mind, a plan to escape and bring him to justice was taking shape. Unbeknownst to her captor, Kara still held on to hope. He went on, "You've done well so far. I need to make a phone call now to make sure you don't escape. I'll put you back in the plastic bin. If you promise not to scream, I won't gag you." Kara quickly agreed, assuring him she wouldn't make a sound. Soon after, she was locked back in the bin. But moments later, she began struggling to breathe, thrashing in distress. Noticing her agitation, the abductor opened the lid and asked, "What's wrong?" Kara replied, "I can't breathe." He responded coldly, "As long as you stay quiet, I won't close the lid." Kara nodded swiftly and breathed lightly, maintaining her silence. He resumed his phone call, and though Kara could only hear faintly, she discerned he was speaking to his wife. But the details of the conversation were unclear. That evening, still fearing she might escape, he tightened her confinement. He tied both of her hands and her right leg to the bed, leaving only her left leg free to move. That night, Kara couldn't sleep. Her mind was a storm of fear and tension, yet also brimming with determination. As dawn approached, her captor was still fast asleep. Kara knew this was her chance. Using her teeth, she carefully and quietly unfastened the restraints on her hands, avoiding any noise. After freeing her hands, she untied her leg, then skillfully gathered her belongings and moved toward the living room. She remembered a pile of items near the door. If she opened it carelessly, the noise might wake him. But this was her only opportunity, and she couldn't let it slip. Kara flung the door open and bolted outside, her heart pounding with hope and resolve. She found herself in a parking lot. Scanning her surroundings, she knew that if she could find someone, she'd be saved. Fortunately, a car appeared. Kara summoned all her strength, sprinting toward it and blocking its path. She desperately pleaded with the driver, explaining she had been abducted, and showed him the scars and restraints on her wrists. Inside the car were two men, the driver and a passenger, who were incredibly kind and immediately took her to the nearest police station. At the station, Kara recounted her ordeal to the officer on duty. However, the officer was skeptical and didn't believe her story at first. It wasn't until Kara showed him the marks from the restraints on her wrists that he finally took her seriously. The police then called Kara's mother, informing her, "Your daughter has been found, but she can't come home just yet. Kara needs to lead us to the abductor's residence so we can apprehend him immediately." So, despite having just escaped a harrowing ordeal, Kara had to guide the police back to the hell she had fled. Though she remembered the general route, the area was filled with apartment complexes, all with identical architecture. Having fled in a panic, she couldn't recall exactly which apartment belonged to her captor. Still, Kara retained critical details about the abductor, the name of his doctor, the card from the fridge, the serial number on the plastic bin, and the long red hairs on the comb in the bathroom. The police located the apartment complex manager responsible for the area where the abductor lived. After Kara provided these key details, the manager quickly directed the police to the right location. Since long red hair was uncommon in the area, the manager recalled a couple living in one of the apartments, the wife having long red hair. When the police arrived to apprehend the suspect, they found the apartment empty. Likely, the sound of Kara opening the door during her escape had woken him, and realizing she might have fled and alerted the police, he fled in a hurry. Though he escaped, his apartment remained. After further investigation, the police identified the suspect as Richard Mark Evenitz, a 38-year-old man. His name was completely unknown to local law enforcement. No prior record placed him on their radar. Could he have been an upstanding citizen? The police obtained a search warrant and meticulously examined Richard's apartment. The findings matched Kara's description perfectly, but a startling discovery emerged. Among Richard's belongings, they found newspapers from Virginia with a bold headline, "Bodies of 16-year-old Sophia, 15-year-old Kristen, and 12-year-old Katie found." The police began to see a connection between Richard and the earlier cases. He wasn't an unknown figure. He might be a serial offender. Investigators started digging deeper into Richard Evenitz, a man who may have been responsible for cases they thought were closed. Would Richard be caught, and could the old cases finally be solved? The police suspected that the newspapers Richard kept might be trophies of his crimes. Additionally, the stealthy way he abducted Kara, silently leaving no chance for resistance, suggested a method he had perfected over time. Moreover, Kara's age was close to that of the previous victims, further supporting the theory that Richard was behind the earlier Virginia murders as well. The evidence room yielded even more crucial findings from Richard's apartment. A pair of fuzzy handcuffs was discovered, and forensic testing revealed that the fibers on these cuffs perfectly matched those found on the bodies of the 3 girls from the earlier cases. This was a pivotal piece of evidence, proving Richard's direct link to those crimes. Another shocking discovery was the presence of fingerprints belonging to Christine, a 15-year-old who had vanished over 5 years earlier, found in Richard's car. Even more baffling, the fingerprints remained intact after such a long time, indicating that Richard was not only a perpetrator, but also highly methodical in covering his tracks. Kara, though a survivor, wasn't surprised to learn that Richard might have committed other crimes. She recalled how professionally and calmly he had abducted her. Clearly not his first time. Despite the mounting evidence, Richard had fled before the police could arrest him, leaving no trace behind. The police tracked down his wife and mother, who were vacationing at Disneyland, and informed them of the shocking truth. Both women were in disbelief. Richard, to them, had always been an honest and kind man, incapable of such atrocities. Once again, Richard had vanished without a trace, but the police, armed with scientific evidence and Kara's testimony, were not about to give up. The hunt for Richard was not just a legal pursuit, but a tense battle of wits between the criminal and law enforcement. Richard's sister, however, showed no surprise during her police questioning, which caught their attention. It seemed she knew something significant that she had kept hidden for years. After multiple interrogations, she finally broke her silence and revealed everything about Richard's actions. The police acted swiftly, dispatching a team to apprehend him, but when they arrived at a cheap motel, Richard sensed the danger and fled in his car. A relentless police chase ensued, lasting hours. In the end, when the pursuit reached Florida, Richard, realizing he had no escape, took his own life rather than face justice. The police concluded their hunt with Richard's tragic end, a grim conclusion for the criminal but also a form of closure for his victims. Richard Evenitz was born in Columbia, South Carolina, the eldest of 3 siblings. His parents divorced when he was young. Reports describe his father as an abusive alcoholic who frequently beat his children. One of Richard's most haunting memories was at age 6, when his father attacked a beloved pet dog and even threatened Richard's life. These experiences left deep scars, likely steering him toward a path of crime. Though a calculated and cold-blooded offender, Richard's cruelty couldn't escape the light of justice in the end. Richard graduated high and, at 17, became a manager at Jiffy Lube. However, he often neglected his work, associating with unsavory characters. Concerned for his future, his parents hoped the military's strict discipline would reform him. Following their arrangement, Richard joined the military, serving as a sonar technician and earning a Good Conduct Medal. But later, he committed an indecent act in front of a 15-year-old girl, though he wasn't classified as a sex offender. At 25, still in the military, he married 17-year-old Bonnie Gower. After their marriage, they settled in Virginia, where Richard spent $125,970 on a new house. But just 5 months later, their marriage ended. Bonnie had met a man online in California, fell in love, and left to pursue that relationship. When she returned, she sought a divorce from Richard. Bonnie's departure to California coincided with Richard's abduction of Sophia, highlighting the profound impact the divorce had on him. Later, at 36, Richard met his second wife, 17-year-old Crowley. Typically, a serial offender doesn't stop after one crime, but Richard was different. After this marriage, he ceased his criminal activities. Experts later discovered that Richard had certain deviant preferences, such as shaving his wife's body hair. It's possible that, because his wife indulged these desires, Richard led a relatively stable life from 1988 to 1995, and again from 1997 to 2001. Another notable pattern was Richard's abnormal fixation on young girls. His victims were all very young, and both of his wives were teenagers when he married them. This likely stemmed from deep-seated psychological distortions. His wife also revealed to the police that Richard wanted her to dress in a cute way, like a young girl, because he was drawn to younger women. Experts believe that as his wife matured, Richard likely lost interest, becoming irritable and restless, ultimately seeking out younger girls and resuming his criminal behavior. Richard was an exceptionally discreet predator. After committing 2 consecutive crimes, he went silent for long periods, and even his wife didn't suspect him. The police initially found no evidence tying him to the crimes, earning him the moniker the Silent Predator. Without Kara's intelligence and bravery, Richard might have evaded justice entirely. Story 6. On Friday, July 21, 2023. A shocking piece of news broke through the sweltering summer heat. The renowned Chinese-American forensic scientist, Dr. Henry Lee, was exposed in a high-profile case. In a retrial, a judge ruled that he must be held accountable for fabricating evidence. The Associated Press, citing the Hartford Courant, reported that U.S. District Judge Victor Bolden determined Dr. Henry Lee had falsified evidence in a murder case he handled nearly 40 years ago, resulting in 2 innocent men from Connecticut serving 30 years in prison. As soon as the news surfaced, both Chinese and English-language media, spanning traditional outlets and social media accounts, erupted with sensational headlines like Henry Lee caught fabricating evidence, Henry Lee at 84 sees his lifelong reputation crumble, and Henry Lee's fake evidence robbed 2 young men of their lives. Some social media users in the U.S. even launched a petition calling for a review of every case Dr. Henry Lee had worked on over the past few decades to determine if there were other wrongful convictions. In an instant, 84-year-old Dr. Henry Lee seemed to face condemnation from the entire world. Could a single bath towel really destroy the legacy of a lifetime? What case was Dr. Lee involved in? How was this case reopened? And what role did he play in it? Let's revisit the court records from when the defendants were exonerated years ago, as well as the legal filings against the Connecticut State Police and government. Drawing on the National Registry of Exonerations, a database established by the University of Michigan that catalogs every successfully overturned wrongful conviction in the U.S. since 1989. Today's video will answer all these questions. Let's start with the murder case from 38 years ago. On December 2, 1985, the last day of the Thanksgiving holiday weekend in the U.S., a deadly robbery occurred at a home in the small town of New Milford, Connecticut. The victim was Everett Carr, a 65-year-old retired truck driver. He was stabbed 27 times, his head struck repeatedly, and he ultimately died in the hallway connecting the living room to the kitchen on the first floor. 2 of the stab wounds pierced his aorta, causing blood to splatter across nearby walls and the ceiling, creating a horrific crime scene. The person who reported the crime was Diana, the victim's daughter, who lived with him. She stated that the previous evening, she had gone out on a date with her boyfriend. Before leaving, she heard her father coughing from a cold in the bedroom next door. But when she returned early the next morning, she found him lying motionless in a pool of blood. According to Diana, a few items were missing from the house: an old video recorder, some clothing, inexpensive jewelry, and a few rolls of coins. The total value of these items was just over $100. The police classified the incident as a robbery homicide. At the time, New Milford's population was under 4,000, and its police force was limited. The town had long enjoyed good public safety, and many officers and forensic experts had never encountered a murder case. As a result, they sought assistance from the Connecticut State Police. However, unlike today's collaborative investigations, in the 1980s, such joint cases were typically led by local police. In other words, the state police personnel sent to assist were only responsible for tasks like collecting and testing initial evidence, while critical steps, such as photographing the scene and documenting findings, were handled by New Milford's detective team. At the time, Dr. Henry Lee held the position of director of the Connecticut State Forensic Laboratory and attended the scene as a state police consultant. The victim had lost 90% of his blood, leaving the crime scene nearly impossible to navigate without stepping in it. The investigation team had to construct a temporary wooden ramp to access the body and collect evidence without disturbing the scene. They found a blood-stained knife sheath under the victim's body, but no murder weapon. On the first floor, near the entrance, they discovered 4 partial bloody footprints, different in size from the victim's, likely belonging to the perpetrator. Scattered bloodstains were also found in an upstairs bedroom, primarily on a nightstand and a cigar box placed on it. The team collected over 40 fingerprints from the house, none matching the victim or his daughter. These could belong to the perpetrator or to others who had interacted with the family. Beyond these findings, no other traces of the perpetrator were found at the scene. Neighbors recalled hearing a loud car around 12:10 a.m. that night. Peering out their window, they saw a vehicle parked in front of the victim's house. About 20 minutes later, the engine roared again, and when they looked out, the car was gone. Based on the timing, this noisy vehicle was likely the perpetrators. But due to poor nighttime visibility, the neighbor couldn't discern the driver, the car's make, or the number of occupants, adding further challenges to the investigation. With Christmas approaching, news of the robbery murder spread, sparking widespread panic in the small town and neighboring communities. The police faced immense pressure. They held frequent press conferences, promising to ensure a peaceful Christmas for residents. This intense pressure to solve the case quickly led the police to take some astonishing measures. The investigation began with a focus on theft, targeting known petty thieves and fences with prior records. Among them, one thief claimed he had heard about two strangers who had robbed several homes on the same street as the crime, also during the Thanksgiving weekend. The car they drove was notoriously loud. The police were intrigued. This matched the neighbor's testimony. It didn't take long for them to track down the two out-of-towners mentioned by the thief, Sean Henning, 17, and Ralph Birch, 18, along with their beat-up, noisy car. Both were quintessential troubled youths, high school dropouts, addicted to various substances and habitual thieves. When out of money, they stole anything from bicycles to cars, small apartments to large villas. If an opportunity arose, they took it. If not, they made one. This time, Henning had a new girlfriend whose parents lived just outside New Milford. The trio had come to the area after attending a friend's party, planning to spend the night. After dropping off the girlfriend, the two young men got restless. They figured that, with many people visiting relatives during the holidays, homes would be empty, perfect for stealing. However, both adamantly denied killing Everett or stealing from his home. Henning, the younger of the two, even vomited on the spot when police showed him photos of the victim's body. But the police weren't ready to let these suspects go, subjecting them to hours-long interrogations. Soon, inconsistencies and contradictions emerged in their statements. For instance, both initially denied ever meeting the victim, but later Henning mentioned that the victim was a large man with a tattoo, which Everett indeed had. Another example, they initially claimed they'd never been inside the crime scene room, but hours later, Birch pointed to a corner of a crime scene photo and asked if it was the bathroom, a detail accurate to the house's layout. Such flawed and contradictory statements only strengthened the police's belief that they were the killers. But these fragmented confessions alone weren't enough to charge them. Moreover, the physical evidence couldn't be linked to either suspect. The over 40 suspicious fingerprints didn't match theirs, and the two bloody footprints differed in size and pattern from their shoes. Most critically, no traces of the victim were found on their bodies, clothes, or car. As mentioned earlier, the crime scene was gruesome. It would have been nearly impossible to avoid bloodstains. If they had cleaned themselves and changed clothes to eliminate evidence, their car, overflowing with dirty clothes, random items, leftover food, and trash, should have yielded something. The car itself was stolen, and according to their statements, both were homeless during this period, living and sleeping in that cramped vehicle. The police even found receipts left by the car's previous owner inside. Clearly, the two hadn't cleaned it after stealing it. In such a filthy, chaotic environment, the absence of any blood or hair linked to the victim left the police investigation at a dead end. Yet, despite this, the police refused to abandon these suspects. They arrested Henning and Birch on theft charges and began investigating their associates. First was the girlfriend. She stated that on the night of the crime, all three had attended a friend's party until after midnight, then drove nearly 30 kilometers to drop her off at her parents' house. She didn't know what the two did afterward. This timeline clearly conflicted with the neighbor's account, which placed the car at the crime scene from 12:15 to 12:30 a.m. According to the girlfriend, they were still driving her home at that time, giving the two a solid alibi. But the police interrogated her aggressively. A few hours later, she changed her story, claiming they reached her parents' house by 11:30 p.m., leaving just enough time for the two to drive back to New Milford, rob the house, and kill the victim. Another witness was Henning's grandmother. She proactively told the police that her grandson had confided in her about witnessing a homeowner and his dog being killed while he was stealing from a house. While this statement seemed related to the case, It didn't align with the police's expectations. She said her grandson only saw someone being harmed, not that he committed the act himself. Moreover, the case involved only one victim. No dog was killed. Additionally, the grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's with unreliable memory for dates and specifics. In subsequent police interviews, her answers grew increasingly muddled and contradictory. She even became unsure whether her grandson had told her the story at all. Beyond these two witnesses, one young, one elderly, the police struggled to find any other credible witnesses or valuable physical evidence. Time slipped by, and by the fall of 1987, nearly 2 years after the murder, Henning and Birch were nearing the end of their sentences for unrelated theft charges. Determined not to let these prime suspects slip away, the police went on the offensive. They visited the jail where Henning was held and identified a fellow inmate, Robert Perugini, who had a lengthy criminal record. When Perugini learned he was about to be transferred to an adult prison to continue his sentence, the police offered him an enticing deal. If he could extract information from Henning, any admission related to the murder, whether Henning committed it himself or implicated his friend, Perugini would receive a reduced sentence and avoid the harsher adult facility. Less than a month later, Perugini, now an informant, reported to the police that Henning had confessed to being the killer. In that era, without personal recording or video devices, such claims relied solely on the informant's word. However, aside from Henning's alleged admission, the details Perugini provided were vague. After repeated prompting from the police, he eventually recounted the entire crime in vivid detail. The informant planted with Birch, by contrast, was far less effective. Birch revealed nothing by the time he was released. The police had no choice but to let him go, though they assigned officers to tail him. They soon discovered that, after his release, Birch, homeless and jobless, moved in with a friend named Todd, another repeat offender with a long rap sheet. Birch stayed at Todd's for only a few months before Todd was arrested again for theft. When the New Milford Police Department caught wind of this, they swooped in and made Todd an offer. "You're in deep trouble this time. A repeat offense means a harsh sentence from the judge, but you can trade your freedom by testifying against Birch." Todd, unsurprisingly, chose to cooperate, agreeing to testify that Birch confessed to the robbery and murder in exchange for avoiding prosecution himself. It was clear that the New Milford police were hell-bent on closing the case, willing to use any means necessary to pin the crime on Henning and Birch. With these two key witnesses in play, in November 1988 and January 1989, the police formally charged both men with murder, scheduling trials for April 1989. By this point, nearly 4 years had passed since the crime. In truth, the case remained riddled with weaknesses, most glaringly the near-total absence of physical evidence linking either suspect to the murder. Mere testimony without corroboration was unlikely to convince a jury. Enter the infamous bath towel, a piece of evidence that would spark intense controversy. As noted earlier, the crime scene was gruesome, with blood splattered across walls and ceilings, yet no traces of blood were found on the suspects. This was an undeniable gap in the case. To address it, the police called in several experts to provide explanations. Among them, the most persuasive was Henry Lee, a bloodstain analysis expert. At trial, the prosecution presented numerous crime scene photos, focusing on the distribution of blood on the walls and ceiling. They argued that if the perpetrator and victim were positioned at a specific angle during the attack, the perpetrator could have avoided getting blood on themselves. Henry Lee demonstrated in court showing that blood splatter hitting an obstacle would leave distinct patterns on the wall, but no such patterns appeared in the crime scene photos. This suggested there was likely nothing between the victim and the wall. When asked if this scenario was possible, Lee responded, "In my opinion, it's probably possible." In reality, common sense dictates that in a blood-soaked crime scene, the odds of a perpetrator keeping their clothes completely clean are slim. The prosecution knew this, so they posited that the perpetrator went upstairs after the crime to shower and change, explaining why no blood was found on their bodies or in their car. The evidence supporting this theory: 2 bath towels in the upstairs bathroom. According to the police report, they found 2 towels there, one allegedly stained with blood. Additionally, a small amount of blood was detected on the edge of the sink. During the trial, the defense demanded that the towel be presented in court for the jury to examine. But the prosecution objected, arguing it was just an ordinary towel, nothing noteworthy, and that Henry Lee's explanation of the test results was sufficient. Ultimately, the judge sided with the prosecution. Lee described the towel as having a faint stain resembling a light red smear. After testing, he said, the stain was confirmed as blood. However, due to the small sample size and limited testing methods, it couldn't be determined whether the blood belonged to the victim or the defendants. Lee didn't claim to have personally discovered the blood, only that a chemical test yielded a positive and consistent result, suggesting it was likely blood. Another related piece of evidence was a crime scene photo showing a slight fluorescent reaction on the towel. The photo was taken by a photographer hired by the local police department, putting aside whether the perpetrator showered and cleaned the scene post-crime. Consider the hygiene habits of the two suspects. Their daily lives were chaotic and filthy. How could they suddenly become so meticulous as to shower thoroughly, scrub the bathroom from top to bottom, and leave only a faint blood stain on a towel and sink? Moreover, according to the victim's daughter, her father had a severe cold before his death, coughing heavily. The small blood stains in the bedroom and bathroom could easily have come from his throat or nose due to mucosal bleeding. Even the prosecution admitted the towel evidence was flimsy, acknowledging that the idea of the perpetrator showering and changing at the scene was a bold conjecture based on the crime scene's condition, not backed by any robust physical evidence. But with so little evidence tying the defendants to the crime, the towel was reluctantly introduced as the only tangible link. The prosecution's primary focus remained the witnesses. The girlfriend, grandmother, jailhouse informant, and roommate all testified in turn. The two informants and the roommate were particularly emphatic, claiming both defendants confessed to the robbery and murder. Notably, Henning, perhaps overconfident in his innocence or simply unconcerned, didn't hire a reliable lawyer for his trial. Instead, he casually accepted a court-appointed public defender. This attorney was visibly disengaged in court, overlooking numerous obvious inconsistencies. The outcome was predictable. On April 19, 1989, the first trial concluded, and the jury found Henning guilty of murder. He was sentenced to 50 years in prison. Birch, tried afterward, began to panic and requested a new lawyer. But his new attorney had only 2 months to prepare, and his motion to delay the trial was denied. His last-minute scramble proved futile. He, too, was convicted of murder and sentenced to 55 years. Both men appealed twice, but their appeals were rejected. They served nearly 20 years in separate prisons. It wasn't until 2008 that they formally petitioned to have their convictions overturned through an organization called the Innocence Project. Founded in 2003, this nonprofit aims to use DNA testing to exonerate the wrongfully convicted and push for reforms to prevent future injustices in the criminal justice system. However, outdated forensic techniques weren't the sole cause of erroneous verdicts. More often, it was unchecked police misconduct during interrogations, using aggressive tactics and inducements to coerce confessions. Such methods almost always succeeded with young, inexperienced suspects. The initial inconsistencies in Henning and Birch's statements about the tattoo and the bathroom stemmed from these tactics. These confessions were later retracted or revealed to have been coerced. A joint investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice, the U.S. Senate, and the Cardozo School of Law found that 70% of wrongful convictions result from mistaken witness identifications during coercive police interrogations. This case perfectly fit the profile: questionable witnesses and weak physical evidence. The Innocence Project tracked down Perugini, Henning's former cellmate who testified against him. He admitted to lying. Henning never mentioned the murder to him. Perugini had betrayed his friend out of fear of being sent to an adult prison. The crime details he provided were fed to him by the police. The former girlfriend also clarified that she left the friend's party at 12:30 a.m., arriving at her parents' house after 1 a.m. She recalled watching a midnight TV drama, Barnaby Jones, before going to bed. She only changed her timeline after relentless police questioning and threats to expose her drug use to her parents. Both expressed deep remorse for their cowardice over the past 20 years. Too afraid to confront the mistakes of their youth, they had buried the truth deep inside. It wasn't until the Innocence Project lawyers reached out that they unburdened themselves and spoke honestly. The other two witnesses from the original trial had passed away and could no longer speak. Todd, Birch's roommate, was killed in a street brawl. Henning's grandmother had died years earlier. As for physical evidence, the crime scene house had changed hands multiple times over 20 years and was demolished for redevelopment, making it impossible to collect new evidence. The only option was to test items preserved in the police evidence room, with the bloodstained towel being the most critical. The results of this retest shocked everyone. Not only was there no DNA evidence linking the defendants to the crime scene, but the towel showed no traces of blood at all. The faint stain, long discolored, was proven to be an inorganic substance. This discovery became the most dramatic turning point in the effort to overturn the case. Henry Lee explained that the towel had been stored in the police evidence room for over 20 years, and biological degradation or alteration was natural. The bloodstain, he said, was minimal to begin with and may have dissipated or flaked off during testing. On this point, some forensic experts agreed that biological evidence can indeed degrade over time, especially under poor storage conditions. With a small initial sample, complete disappearance isn't impossible. In a recent public response, Henry Lee produced a copy of the evidence bag label for the towel, which he still possessed. It read, Evidence 16, Time 2305. Evidence: white towel with pink-green pattern with blood-like stain. Location: sink rack in second floor bathroom. But the defendant's lawyer argued that the issue wasn't evidence collection, but that Lee never tested the towel in the first place. They claimed he based his conclusion that the stain was blood solely on its appearance and police prompting leading to the wrongful convictions. The debate centered on whether Lee performed a TMB test, also known as a luminol reaction, on the towel stain. The TMB test works by reacting with hemoglobin through a chemical reagent, emitting a blue-purple luminescent glow. It's highly effective for detecting diluted, wiped, or old blood stains. In the 1980s, before DNA technology matured, it was virtually the only method to confirm blood presence. At the original trial, the prosecution presented a photo showing a faint fluorescent reaction on the towel. But, due to the limited photo development technology of the time and the use of a projector to display it, re-examining the photo after 20 years failed to clearly confirm the fluorescence. Consequently, the court summoned the photographer who took the crime scene photos. He testified that his job was solely to document evidence, not to recall specifics about the towel. He also didn't witness Lee or his team conducting a TMB test on it. The controversy surrounding this towel began years ago and continues to be debated today. Returning to the case's reopening after 7 grueling years of investigation and gathering new evidence, in late 2015, the Connecticut Supreme Court announced it would retry the murder case from 30 years prior. The primary reason was that several witnesses from the original trial had provided false testimony under police coercion. Regarding the infamous towel and Henry Lee's testimony from years ago, the presiding judge wrote in the June 2016 ruling, Dr. Lee was wrong but not lying under oath. What does this statement mean? Our interpretation is this. The judge was saying that Dr. Lee was mistaken. Mistaken here likely refers to deficiencies in preserving the towel test records, not an intentional act of fabricating evidence. This was Judge Svaratz's ruling in 2016. Henning and Birch were not declared innocent in that trial, so they continued their appeal to the Connecticut Supreme Court. This time, they succeeded. In the July 2023 ruling, U.S. District Judge Victor Bolden pointed out that Dr. Henry Lee could not provide written documentation or photographic evidence to prove he had conducted the TMB test. In a recent statement, Dr. Lee emphasized, "You cannot claim that because I was at the scene and the documentation was poor, that equates to fabricating evidence. I take full responsibility for everything. You cannot conclude we didn't perform chemical tests just because photos are unclear, nor can you say we fabricated evidence because the photo records are vague. As a forensic scientist, I only presented my crime scene reconstructions and scientific test results in court. Deciding which evidence to use and what questions to ask witnesses is the responsibility of lawyers and judges. I had no motive or reason to fabricate evidence." The chemical test on the towel didn't directly implicate Birch and Henning in the crime. Additionally, during their trial, the scientific evidence I presented included exculpatory findings, such as the absence of blood traces on their bodies and clothing. After the second retrial in July 2019, Birch and Henning were declared not guilty and released in court. By then, the two young men from years past had become middle-aged men in their 50s. As they stepped out of the courthouse, both were in tears, wearing t-shirts emblazoned with the words, "I am innocent and I didn't do it." Remarkably, during their 30 years in prison, both completed the high school education they had previously abandoned and successfully overcame their addictions. Henning even earned a professional certification in training service dogs, personally raising and training several to assist veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder from wartime experiences. Upon learning that the roommate who falsely accused him had died in a gang altercation, Birch didn't feel the man got what he deserved. Instead, he felt grateful for his own transformation. Had he not turned his life around in prison, he might have met a similar fate on the streets long ago. It's fair to say they truly found light at the end of the tunnel. Yet, they lost 30 of the most formative years of their lives to a wrongful conviction. So, in late 2020, they filed civil lawsuits against the New Milford Police Department, the Connecticut State Police, and Dr. Henry Lee to seek compensation for their damages. In 2022, both men submitted claims for state compensation. In September 2023, the state agreed to settle the lawsuit for $25.2 million split evenly between Henning and Birch. The settlement was approved by the state legislature in 2024. New Milford settled with Henning for $2.4 million in November 2024. The ruling against Dr. Henry Lee for fabricating evidence was just the first chapter of this massive lawsuit. 8 police officers involved in the original 1985 investigation also faced criminal charges for obstructing justice and violating civil rights, with their preliminary hearing scheduled for late this year. Henning and Birch expressed, at this point, "It's undeniable that Dr. Henry Lee's stature in the field of forensic science is unparalleled. But science is science, and the law is the law, and the law is the ultimate measure." And the night deepens. Thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.